What's up, my friend? Yesterday's win was exactly the kind of game we needed to feel. The Philadelphia Eagles took the field under pressure, under scrutiny, and they responded the way fans love to see it, with dominance, physicality, and a clear message sent to the rest of the league. This wasn't just a win on the scoreboard, it was a performance that changes the mood, changes the narrative, and reignites confidence in this team. Before we dive into the full breakdown of the game, make sure to leave a like on the video to support the channel. It helps a lot in reaching more fans who bleed green and white. And drop a comment below. What does this win mean to you? And what stood out the most to you last night? I really want to hear your perspective as an Eagles fan. This was the kind of performance that reminds you exactly who this team is supposed to be, and why the Philadelphia Eagles have built their identity the way they have. Coming into this game against the Raiders, there was pressure, there was noise, and there was the reality of a 3-game losing streak hanging over the locker room. What happened on the field was a response in the purest sense. The Eagles didn't just win, they completely erased the opponent from the game, delivering a shutout that hadn't been seen by this franchise since 2018, and only the second time in the 21st century that Philadelphia has held an opponent to 0 points. That alone tells you how rare and significant this performance was, but the details make it even more impressive. The Raiders ran 42 offensive plays and came away with just 75 total yards. That is the fewest yards the Eagles have allowed in the Super Bowl era and the fewest by any team in the NFL this season. This wasn't a bend but don't break type of day. This was domination snap after snap. Goedert summed it up perfectly when he said a goose egg is always great, and holding a team under 100 yards is their style of football. You could see that standard being met all afternoon. The Eagles stopped the run, forced obvious passing situations, and then turned the defensive line loose. After 7 sacks the previous week against the Chargers, they added 4 more, continuing a trend of relentless pressure. Head coach Nick Sirianni emphasized that sacks don't happen without coverage, and that sentiment showed up on tape. This was complete, connected defense, exactly how Vic Fangio wants it, and the execution matched the plan. What made the defensive performance even more compelling was the story happening on the interior of the line. Less than 2 months after coming out of retirement at 37 years old, Brandon Graham turned back the clock with a vintage performance, recording 2 sacks, his first multi-sack game since the 2022 season. This time, though, it didn't come off the edge. With Jalen Carter sidelined, Graham slid into the defensive tackle rotation and made his presence felt from the inside. He talked afterward about simply being ready when his name is called, enjoying being back in the building, and contributing however he can. His teammates fed off it. Sirianni gave him the game ball and pointed out that Graham became the oldest player since 2002 to record 2 sacks in the first half of a game. Jordan Davis described it best, calling him a force to be reckoned with and praising that old man's strength. Moments like that resonate inside a locker room, especially in December. While the defense stole the headlines, the offense quietly delivered one of its most efficient and disciplined games of the season. Dallas Goedert continued what has been an incredible year, finding the end zone twice and giving himself 9 touchdowns on the season. That ties him for 4th in the entire league and places him 2nd among all tight ends. It also marked his 3rd multi-touchdown game this year and moved him within 1 score of tying the franchise single-season touchdown record for a tight end, set by Pete Retzlaff back in 1965. Beyond the touchdowns, Goedert reached another milestone, becoming just the 5th player in franchise history to record 400 career receptions. Yet even with all of that, his focus stayed on the bigger picture, getting back in the win column and turning the page quickly with a short week ahead. One of the biggest reasons the offense was able to find its rhythm was discipline. The Eagles were flagged only 3 times for 35 yards. Goedert explained how clean football allows tempo to build, prevents drives from stalling, and keeps the offense ahead of the sticks. That showed up in the numbers. Philadelphia outgained Las Vegas by 312 yards, the largest margin by an Eagles team since the 2008 season opener against the Rams. Sirianni pointed out how success on early downs, 3rd down conversions, and taking care of the football opened everything else up, including the balance between run and pass. For Sirianni, this game was about more than just one dominant Sunday. It was about how the team handled adversity, blocked out the outside noise, and stayed committed to playing Eagles football. He talked about controlling confidence and joy, staying detailed and together, and not letting circumstances dictate how the team feels. You could see that unity in the way players celebrated each other's plays, whether it was Goedert flying to the ball or Brandon Graham finishing a sack. With this win, Sirianni secured his 5th straight winning season to begin his head coaching career, and it marked the 21st winning season under Jeffrey Lurie's ownership. ownership. Now, with a historic defensive performance behind them and a matchup with the Commanders coming up on Saturday, the message inside the building is clear. This is not the time to relax. As Dean said, it's time to put the foot on the gas and keep getting better. From your perspective as a fan watching this team respond the way it did, what did this performance tell you about who the Eagles really are right now? What stood out as this game kept unfolding was how intentional everything felt, as if the Eagles were making a point to themselves as much as to anyone watching. After weeks where details slipped and margins felt thinner than they should have been, this was a reset built on fundamentals. You could see it in how the defense aligned, communicated, and swarmed to the football. There was no freelancing, no unnecessary risk. Every player trusted the man next to him to do his job, and that trust allowed the unit to play fast and violent without losing structure. When a team holds an opponent to 75 yards over an entire game, that doesn't happen by accident. That's discipline meeting preparation. Vic Fangio's influence was obvious throughout the afternoon. The Raiders were constantly forced into unfavorable situations, particularly on early downs, which made their offense predictable. Once that happened, the Eagles' pass rush could tee off, but only because the secondary was holding up on the back end. Sirianni made it clear that this was a complete team effort on defense, and the film backs that up. Coverage forced hesitation, hesitation led to pressure, and pressure ended drives. That cycle repeated itself over and over until the Raiders simply had no answers left. Even after building a comfortable lead, there was no let-up. The standard stayed the same from the opening drive to the final whistle. That same mindset showed up offensively, even though the game script could have tempted them to coast. Instead of forcing big plays or chasing highlights, the Eagles played within themselves. They stayed ahead of the chains, converted on third down, and avoided the self-inflicted mistakes that had hurt them in previous weeks. The low penalty count wasn't just a stat, it was a reflection of focus. Goedert talked about how penalties kill tempo, and you could feel the difference when drives flowed naturally. The offense stayed on schedule, controlled the pace, and consistently put the defense back on the field in tough spots. Dallas Goedert's season deserves extra context when you look at it through that lens. His 9 touchdowns aren't coming from gimmicks or broken plays. They're coming from trust, timing, and understanding of spacing within the offense. Reaching 400 career receptions places him among rare company in franchise history, and being 1 touchdown away from a record that's stood since 1965 speaks to just how productive and reliable he's been. Yet his post-game comments reflected the tone of the entire locker room. Individual achievements mattered far less than the collective result. The win changed the mood, the energy, and the trajectory heading into a critical stretch. Then there's Brandon Graham, whose performance carried emotional weight beyond the stat sheet. Seeing him line up inside and still impact the game the way he did sent a message about adaptability and leadership. Coming out of retirement, shifting roles, and still producing at a high level is not something you see often in this league. His teammates' reactions said everything. When Jordan Davis talks about old man strength and learning new tricks, it's half joking, half reverence. Those moments strengthen a locker room, especially when younger players see what commitment and preparation look like over a long career. Sirianni's comments about confidence and joy were especially telling. He emphasized that those things are controlled internally, not dictated by outside narratives. This performance felt like proof of that philosophy. The Eagles didn't chase validation, they focused on execution. That approach earned them their 9th win and continued a run of consistent success under this coaching staff and ownership. 5 straight winning seasons to start a head coaching career is not common, and it doesn't happen without buy-in from the entire organization. Now the challenge becomes sustaining it. A historic shutout can't be a finish line. The defense knows that, the offense knows that, and the coaching staff made sure the message was clear immediately after the game. There's a short week ahead and another divisional test coming fast. What matters most is whether this performance becomes the foundation for what's next, or simply a reminder of what they're capable of when everything aligns. From where you sit as a fan, watching this team respond with this level of dominance, do you see this game as a true turning point for the Eagles moving forward, or do you need to see it repeated before fully buying in? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more Eagles coverage like this, make sure you subscribe, leave a like on the video, and stay locked in for what's coming next. What also can't be overlooked is how this game reshaped the internal conversation about identity. For weeks, there had been questions about whether this team had drifted from what made it dangerous in the first place. Against the Raiders, the answer was clear without needing to be spoken out loud. Physical defense, smart situational football, and patience on offense were all back at the center of everything. This wasn't about chasing style points. It was about re-establishing control. When a team dominates time of possession, limits penalties, protects the football, and suffocates an opponent defensively, that's Eagles football in its purest form. The defense, in particular, looked like a unit that knew exactly who it was. Every tackle felt decisive. Every third down stop carried an edge to it. Even with a lead, the body language never shifted into cruise control. That's something coaches notice, and it's something that carries over week to week. Nakobe Dean's comment about putting the foot on the gas wasn't just post-game talk. It reflected how this group sees its responsibility. A performance like this raises expectations internally, and now the standard has been publicly set. Offensively, the significance goes beyond yardage totals. The biggest takeaway was how comfortable the unit looked operating within the structure of the game plan. There was no panic, no forcing throws, no need to chase momentum swings. Sirianni talked about staying in front of the sticks and converting on third down, and that's exactly what allowed the offense to stay balanced. When you can do that, everything else becomes easier, from play calling to clock management. It also takes pressure off the defense, which only compounds the advantage. Dallas Goedert's role in that balance can't be overstated. He wasn't just a red zone finisher, he was a stabilizing presence throughout the game. His understanding of spacing, leverage, and timing kept drives alive and allowed the offense to maintain rhythm. Being one touchdown away from a franchise record is significant, but what matters more is how dependable he's been in critical moments. That reliability is invaluable as the season tightens and every possession carries more weight. And then there's the emotional anchor of the locker room, embodied by players like Brandon Graham. His 2 sacks weren't just impactful plays, they were symbolic. They represented resilience, adaptability, and belief. Seeing a veteran step into a different role and still thrive sends a powerful message, especially to younger players navigating the grind of an NFL season. It reinforces the idea that preparation and effort don't age out, and that contribution comes in many forms. Sirianni's emphasis on blocking out outside noise ties all of this together. This game didn't feel reactionary. It felt intentional. The Eagles didn't play angry, they played focused. They didn't try to silence critics, they tried to execute their plan. That distinction matters. Teams that chase narratives often lose their footing. Teams that chase details usually find consistency. Now the real test begins. A dominant win like this can either become a springboard or a standalone moment. The difference lies in how the team carries itself in the days that follow. The preparation, the urgency, and the willingness to treat the next opponent with the same respect and intensity will determine whether this performance was the start of something or simply a reminder of potential. As a fan watching all of this unfold, how confident are you that this version of the Eagles is here to stay? And what do you think will be the biggest challenge in sustaining this level of play down the stretch? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and keep your eyes on the screen for more Eagles coverage coming your way. What makes this moment especially interesting is how much responsibility now shifts from talent to mindset. The Eagles didn't discover something new about themselves in this game. They rediscovered something familiar. Everything that showed up against the Raiders has been part of this team's DNA all season, and in many cases, for years. The difference was consistency. Consistency in execution, consistency in effort, and consistency in attention to detail. When all three align, the margin between Philadelphia and its opponent becomes obvious very quickly. This game also reframed how the locker room views momentum. Momentum in the NFL is fragile, and it rarely carries over automatically. What does carry over is habit. The way the defense communicated pre-snap, the way players rallied to the ball, the way the offense avoided putting itself behind schedule, those are habits built during the week. Sirianni referenced that repeatedly, emphasizing how the team worked, not how it talked. That distinction matters late in the season. At this point, teams don't reinvent themselves, they reveal themselves. Another subtle but important element was how much joy was visible on the sideline without it turning into complacency. Players celebrated each other's success, especially on defense, but the energy never tipped into showboating. When Brandon Graham made a play, the entire unit reacted because they understood what it meant within the context of the game. That collective response reinforces accountability. Everyone benefits when one player executes, and everyone is affected when someone doesn't. That's the essence of complementary football, and it was on full display. The shutout itself will grab headlines, but internally, the Eagles will likely focus more on how it was achieved. Limiting an opponent to 75 yards requires winning first down, tackling cleanly, and finishing drives defensively. Those are the areas that translate regardless of opponent. The same goes for the offense playing clean football. 3 penalties is not flashy, but it's one of the clearest indicators of focus and discipline. Games in December are often decided by those margins. Looking ahead, the challenge is resisting the urge to measure success by the previous result. The standard can't be a shutout. The standard has to be preparation, execution, and response. Nakobe Dean's comment about putting the foot on the gas speaks directly to that. Satisfaction is the enemy at this stage of the season. The Eagles know that, and this performance raised the bar they now have to clear every week. So as this chapter closes and attention turns forward, the real question isn't whether the Eagles are capable of dominating like this. We've seen that answer. The question is whether they can stack this level of focus, discipline, and intensity week after week when the pressure only increases. That's what will define the rest of the season. Now I want to hear from you. After watching this complete response on both sides of the ball, what do you believe this game truly represents for the Eagles moving forward, and what are you watching most closely to see if it carries over? Leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and keep your eyes on the screen for more Eagles content coming next. What will ultimately define this stretch isn't the memory of one dominant afternoon, but how quickly the Eagles are able to reset their internal clock. Great teams have a short memory, not because they forget success, but because they refuse to live in it. The coaching staff made it clear through their comments that this win was treated as confirmation, not a conclusion. Confirmation that the work during the week still matters. Confirmation that the structure in place still holds. And confirmation that when the details are respected, the results follow naturally. There's also an important psychological layer here that fans don't always get to see. A shutout like this reinforces belief. But belief can be dangerous if it turns into assumption. The best locker rooms understand the difference. What this game seemed to do was restore trust. Trust in the scheme. Trust in each other. Trust that if everyone handles their responsibility, the collective outcome will take care of itself. That's a powerful thing, especially late in the season when physical fatigue and mental were start to blur judgment. The defensive performance set a benchmark, not just statistically, but emotionally. Playing with edge without crossing into recklessness is a fine line, and the Eagles walked it perfectly. Every stop felt intentional. Every tackle felt finished. That kind of defensive identity travels, regardless of venue or opponent. It also creates a sense of inevitability that opponents can feel early in games, when nothing comes easy and every yard has to be earned the hard way. On offense, the takeaway isn't that everything was perfect, but that everything was functional. Functional football wins in December. Staying ahead of the sticks, avoiding penalties, and converting in key moments allows the team to control the game instead of reacting to it. Dallas Goedert's production is a reflection of that control. He's not forcing himself into the spotlight. He's operating where the offense needs him most, and that balance makes the entire unit harder to defend. Leadership continues to be the quiet constant underneath all of this. Brandon Graham's impact, both on the field and in the locker room, symbolizes what sustained culture looks like. His ability to adapt roles, embrace change, and still contribute at a high level reinforces standards without speeches. Younger players see that. Veterans respect it. Coaches rely on it. Those are the connective tissues that don't show up in box scores but often determine how far a team can go. As the Eagles move deeper into this critical